Hello, everybody. So we will start the third roundtable of today. How could inclusive fashion become the new normal? With me, we have Delphine Gauthier, founder of Maison Finou, Charlène Damu, the founder of Sidems Lab, Mathilde Alloin, who represents the Women Project, Emma Butler, founder of Libérar. I don't know if I pronounce it well, but you will pronounce it after me. And Melody Thomas, who is writer and journalist. Maybe you can introduce yourself in 3 minutes to our audience.
Hello, I'm the founder of Maison Finou. Maison Finou is an inclusive, eco-responsible lingerie and swimwear brand, designed and made in Paris. We develop collections in standard size and can be adjusted directly on the body. We develop collection in standard size with a wide range of size, from 32 to 56, and from A cup to H cup, and each can be adjusted directly on the body. We manufacture the pieces ourselves on demand, which allows us to be flexible and to adapt to a more specific request, such a person who has had a breast cancer, who needs to have 2 different cup size, for example. Being an inclusive brand is at the heart of our concerns.
Thank you. Charlène?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Charlène. I am the founder of the Sidems Lab, based here in Paris. I've been working in the fashion industry for 12 years, and my goal with the Sidems Lab is to accompany brands in developing garments for any bodies. So the Sidems Lab is a design and development studio for everyone.
Thank you. Mathilde?
Hi, I'm Mathilde. I also work in the fashion industry for about 10 years with a big focus on lingerie. And I develop with the Women Project technologies for brands to enable size-less and waste-free products through an API.
Hi,
Yes.
I'm Emma, and I'm the founder of Liberaire. We make bras and underwear right now for everybody, but it's especially accessible for disabled women. We use new fastening technology that makes it easier because the hook and eyes can be really hard for a lot of women. I started it because my mom began to live with chronic pain about 10 years ago, and there were no options. We just launched last year. We're a team run by disabled women and non-disabled women based out of the States and London, and yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay, sorry. Hi, my name is Melody, and I'm a journalist for the past 10 years also. And I'm also a teacher at Parsons Schools Paris, and I released a book last year which is called Fashion is Political, and it speaks about how fashion can be a tool of empowerment or a tool of control for women.
Thank you. So my first question for you is the term inclusive fashion is very trendy, but is fashion really an inclusive industry? Who wants to start? Yes? Emma?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. And I was thinking about how we have to first define what inclusivity is. And I think that a lot of times we think about inclusivity in fashion as representation on the runway. And I think that's a huge part of it. And it's so important to have representation. But it's also important to have things like, are the actual garments inclusive? Like for plus size garments, do they fit well? Are they skin tone inclusive? Are they accessible for disabled consumers? But then when we think further, it's about the actual team and the buildup. Is it not only the hair and makeup artists, the photographers, the videographers on set? Is it also, does inclusive also mean the accessibility of the runway? Does it also mean inclusivity of who's there and who's able to attend from an equitable standpoint or a socioeconomic background? Who's on the boards of these companies? Who is in the C-suite. And so I think it's a really great question, but I think it's a little bit nuanced in terms of what does inclusive mean. And I think that we need to broaden the scope to think about all of the different moving pieces of inclusivity. And so while it's a great buzzword for the runway, I think that real change happens behind the scenes when when diverse people are put in positions of power.
Thank you. Delphine?
We observe a real change of mentality, a real awareness, but things take time. It takes time because it involves questioning the way of doing things. Being more inclusive also means offering more size, and just for the manufacturing part, this means completely reviewing the supply chain, being more flexible, changing the way you produce, such as reviewing the minimum of quantity, for example. It also requires more time, more testing on the real people who have different body types to make sure the fitting is good.
Okay, Melody?
Yes, the thing is, for me, when we speak about inclusivity, we have to say, like, if fashion is not inclusive, it's also because we live in a society that is a bit exclusive too. So it's also, I mean, it's interesting that we asked from fashion some things that we don't ask from the societies we're living in. And for the fashion to be a reflect of the society, we need also to improve on the way we treat people regarding of their color, regarding of their abilities, regarding of their gender, regarding on a lot of scope that makes that we're having this conversation today.
Yes. So, actually, this question comes from the fact that we always hear that the workers in fashion are mostly women, and especially when it comes when we are talking about the low income jobs. And that's why the question remains, despite that we can say that inclusive fashion, at least in trends, is something that we are talking more and more about. So let's jump to my second question. You have already introduced it. How to act effectively to reduce the inequalities that remain behind advertising campaigns, and despite recent so-called all-inclusive campaigns. Maybe Charlène?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think it's all about educating people. It's all about bringing them back to the reality that we are human. At the end of the day, garments are made for people. So if any brand is taking into consideration that, okay, my client is this guy, is that woman, is this people, why doing garments, you know? So at first it should be really, and I totally agree with everyone, it should be really to look at ourselves, like every brand should question their core values and address their garment as they should be. I think it's all about that at first.
Yes.
For Maison Finot, we do a photo shoot with many body types, different, as soon as possible, so that everyone can identify and that as many body types can be represented, so that we can see how product will look on us.
Yes.
It's really important.
And Mathilde?
I think also the government should have a responsibility for punishing or how do you say récompenser? Regulating brands, whatever their impact is. And impact is, of course, ecological impact, but as well social impact. And we all know very well how bad an impact can be from I won't name a brand, but you know, like famous brands over-sexualizing women and showing impossible goals of beauty. So I think that, yes, as a brand, you will meet amazing founders as the girls here who have at the core very good ethics and very good values, but this is not the fact everywhere. And there is big brands who are not built and run by younger people who have this in their mind because they were born also with a lot of changes. And those big groups, those big brands should be pushed a little bit more by government, by rules to make the change. Otherwise, they just won't do it.
Okay, so change the society through education and legal transformation. Emma, you want to say something about this question, maybe?
I'm sorry, I keep turning off my mic. Yeah, I also think that like when we have people, diverse people in positions of power, like to create an authentic campaign that's not ineffectual and keeps going through, it comes down to the decision makers being whether that's people of color, queer folks, disabled people, all every identity intersects at some point, and those people are the ones making the campaigns, hiring, like also creating the KPIs and like what are the deliverables we need for each of these campaigns. It's going to be an effectual campaign, but when you have, when you don't have the diverse people in positions of power that understand what the significance happens on these different campaigns, you don't have it. So my answer is hire diverse talent, and not just at lower levels, but in the C-suite and on the board.
Thank you. Melody?
Yes, I would just want to add that transparency is also kind of a key word and like a key function for being trusted today by customers. And I think the lot of issues that we have seen those past few years is because people understand, as you say, like the idea of representation, what you put up front to communicate about your brand, but we need to understand what is behind the curtains and what is being done actually. And I think if we don't cross this bridge from what is being represented and what is being done, it will be difficult for us to go forward.
It's true that when we say things like we have to change education, regulation, politics, whatever, it seems too big, right? So it's almost like saying you can't do anything. But when we see your example, like at Maison Finou or Libera, what you are doing is already showing a very positive example, because you are giving us new kind of images, and those images are very sexy, attractive, and you are showing that there is another way, and that's not something, it's not enough, it will not change everything, but it's still changing some mentalities, so it gives some hope, right? My third question is, in your opinion, where do the inequalities in access to the fashion offer according to individual physical characteristics originate, and how to motivate brands to work differently? Because I guess for brands it's an effort in their way, in their vision. So what would you say? I'm looking at you because you're working with brands.
I do, yes. Yes, actually what is the first thing, and I'm standing with that, but I will explain, is the culture. It's all about the memories, and brands, some of them said that, oh, I love this icon and I want this icon to be my customer. But come on, it's not always the truth. So your icon is your inspiration, but it might not be your customer. So in my studio, because I do accompany brands in developing garments in different sizes, with different morphologies, I am always respecting their background and their essence. But I do challenge them as well to make them understand that the clients are really different, that they will come from everywhere. And so I do use technology for that, the 3D creation for it, to show them different type of avatar. I'm like, look at your garment, like look at this beautiful tailored jacket that you did in size 36. And I'm like, look at the size 32. Look at the size 44. Look at the size 60 and plus. We are there. And so, yeah, I think it's a process, but this is also like pushing them with respect, for sure, but telling them that it's more than memory and icons. We are just human around, yeah?
Mathilde.
Yes, I'm also using 3D scanning with my clients, and if you, so the brands, the sizes, the size system is very recent. It's only appeared in the 1960s during the Industrial Revolution, and before that it didn't exist. So before that we didn't have the oldest sizes, and when it appeared, we started to have a lot of limitations in the garments because of this system. And then we talk about plus size, for example, which is already a big step forward. But this isn't all. I mean, there's so many other body types, as you probably work a lot with, that can't be just put in a size box, but it's really about the body shape. Either you have one breast missing, or if you're a very short person. I mean, think about all these people, where do they go to shop? People who are very tall, people who have, I don't know, very tall legs and short bust, and the other way around, people who have a leg missing, or all of those people who represent a lot of people, they don't fit in most of the brands that exist today. And I think that 3D technologies are very interested in that. To me, 3D scanning is a bit like the change that photography brought on the imagery game. It's all of a sudden you can have all this information about a body and not limited to sizes. And I think this is a way that diversity can be really fully implemented, and not just one by one, not just, okay, let's work on plus size, then let's work on this, but all together, whoever you are, just through 3D scan, you can just be a body shape, and you don't have to fit into something particular. Everyone's equal.
Thank you. Yeah, it makes me think, both of you, you have a great experience, both inside big lingerie brands and outside with your own business. And what is questioning myself is that often small brands, new brands, are going very much further in the direction of more diversity in terms of size and whatever. So how can you explain that, and why big brands? Because I guess they have the money to explore new things, are not motivated to jump into it.
I think they don't have the pressure we do. At our generation, when you start a business, you feel so much weight on your shoulder, like I should tick all the boxes. And especially now that you feel more, and it's not as easy because we don't have the resources, we don't have the means, so it's way more challenging, but we have more motivation to do it when they have more comfort.
And I think also there's a lack of willingness. I mean, it's like, I'm going to rejoin what you were saying about the idea of the imagination or the perfect icon the customers have in mind. For me, it's all about the dream of fashion. What is the dream fashion is selling us? Fashion is selling us the dream that if you wear this set of clothes, you will be exactly like the person that is wearing it. So if you wear the same clothing than Kate Moss, for a while you can pretend that you have the style, the elegance, and maybe like the body shape, if you are lucky to have this type of body shape, than Kate Moss. So it's a way for you to getting closer to somebody that is put in front of you as the goal, like the type of woman, the type of body you should have, the type of woman that you should be. It's more about that than it's about who you are in itself. So I think that's the reason why most of the brands don't feel the pressure, because they are selling the dream. As for young designer, it's not about selling something that does not exist or selling a dream that is inaccessible, because it's most often it's not about luxury in itself. It's more about getting close and dressing for your everyday self. There's a shift in generation. Like, I think for maybe people before us, it was really much about maybe hating yourself because you don't look that way. Whereas now it's more about, why should I look like that? It's not my body shape. It's not, I don't fit in anything. What am I going to do? I'm going to starve? No, I'm going to dress and I'm going to buy something from someone that respects my body, that respects who am I. And so I think that's the difference that we've been seeing this past few decades.
Yeah, thank you. Emma.
I completely agree with Melody. I think that's a really great point. And I also think that like when these big brands are moving, they're moving because they're losing market share and because it's ultimately because of, you know, this exact thing where it's like an everyday need, and it's also a lack of education that I don't think that they're as willing to move. So for example, they're between 15 and 20% of the population is disabled. And every time I say that, or I say the adaptive apparel, which just means clothing for folks with disabilities, is projected to be worth 400 billion by 2026. And disabled people and folks buying for disabled people represent $8 trillion in income every year, disposable income. And people always gasp and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know this. And there's also some other things where it's like about invisible disabilities and other things. And that's just one example. But ultimately, I think what moves the needle too is loss of market share. So they're losing their market share, and then they move because they see an opportunity for sales. And so that's been one of the things that we've seen that's creating changes. I can get up here all day long and talk about my mom's experience and how dehumanizing it was to not find a bra. But she's like one data point in a story, and it's like, great, that's a nice girl who's 25 years old in her nice little company. But then you show your sales figures and you show the market growth, and that ultimately is going to get them going. So having a nice combination of storytelling and amplifying voices, which is incredibly important. I'm in a space where it's ultimately important for disabled voices to be paving the way for a future of accessibility, not some, you know, non-disabled person. And so it's a striking balance, but I find that they move based on sales data.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I just want to add, like, I completely agree with you, but for me, when I say willingness, it's also because some people don't want that. I mean, there's an ideology also for some, not for everyone, but for some, that they should not cater to everyone's needs because about the dream, because they think about the dream, and the dream is this type of people, so they don't think about people with disabilities. They don't really care about people of colors or women being plus size or stuff like that because they are not part of the dream. So even if you show them the numbers, they won't move because that's not the type of clothes that they want to produce. Like, the good news about that is like they are doing that, but now we can see other brands can propose other type of dreams, and that's something we should accentuate. But I think it's also interesting to see that even looking at the numbers, some people won't move.
Yeah. So changing the mind first, and it's true that when you are working with clients and who are trying to compare, they are always comparing their bodies to the one that we display in most advertising on TV, and always complaining about their whatever part of their bodies, right? And it's something that we have to work on absolutely if we want to change the wool industry, because as you said, if women or men continue to identify themselves to a certain ideal, they will always try to conform themselves, and the brand will not have to change in the end. So my other question is, what do you think are the major obstacles that slow down the evolution of the offer toward more inclusiveness? And what are the possible obstacles and difficulties that you yourself have observed and encountered in your own journey? Maybe Delphine, I know some of them.
I talked about it before, but it cuts more and involves changing the way of doing and manufacturing, buying more expensive fabrics suitable for all size, taking more time to test and more morphologize, and maybe it's also linked to a loss of large sizes require different knowledge.
Yeah, because even at school, in fashion school, we did the same. We are working on mannequins which are basically 38. We don't learn so much to work with different body shapes, right?
No, I remember a teacher in that school who, style teacher, fashion design teacher, and I started to, when I was studying lingerie design, I took you have to take a picture from someone to inspire for your drawing. And I took a picture of, what was her name? Kate Upton, like beautiful, curvy, beautiful girl. And teacher forbid me. She said, no, you can't. She's too fat. Like, I was really shocked by then. So it's really a matter of education. We talked about it before, because it really starts in the mind of the designers in school. And when still today you go at some jury or some final exam at some schools, and you look at what they do, and you really tell yourself, what are the teachers teaching really, so that the collections look like that? This is a big, big, big issue. I mean, education is at the start of everything, but yeah.
Thank you. Charlène?
Yeah, I totally agree with everybody, and I would like to give another example in the core process of brands. Marketing, key driver, like those styles that are just like the money driver, the seller. They don't have the time, first of all, to review them, because time is money. And when you have a key T-shirt or a beautiful jacket that is selling well, you don't want to kill that style. When someone is coming to you and say, oh, we have to check the grading, we have to implement more sizes and stuff, they're like, oh, no, that's a carryover, leave it alone. And it's like, but come on, we have to do something. So into the process, this is, again, educating the team and giving them the chance to work towards people.
Yes.
But I think you pointed, to me the problem is the size problem. I think the size system is so limiting, because if you go into producing all sizes in the world, it's just impossible. And to me the solution is really on-demand tailored production. If not, it seems really, really difficult to convince big brands who produce a lot.
May I? That's actually, thank you, because this is my challenge with the studio. I do accompany brand carefully, either into these 360 services, where I'm taking care of the design to the production. And I know that it's difficult, you know, when you are established brand, and it's difficult, I mean, to start from scratch. You know, you still have to run your business and to make your money, right? So when you come with all your styles, like, yeah, I'm gonna do like perfect for you, they're like, what do you mean? So for that, I'm driving workshops to make them understand. So this is education. What is inclusivity, how digital creation can support the sizing process, the pattern maker, how we can push not cutting crazy fabric for no sense. I mean, like, stop it, like, we can take more time. So I'm doing those two things because I do believe that made on demand, it's perfect, honestly. At the end, it's like, tailored, like, you ask me for a garment, I do it quick. But the business is what it is, and it's a big wheel, and we have to kick the door and say, okay, I've got this workshop for you, let's go in it step by step. Look at this t-shirt, I will like show you how to make it for different sizes, try it, like just few numbers, see, question your people, how do they feel happy? They are happy? Amazing. Let's take your shirt. Let's take the pant. This is my goal.
Okay. Emma, you want to say something?
Yes. Just to go back to the original question, it was about what's stopping inclusivity. Is that what the original question is?
Yeah, part of the question is about the obstacle, but what I'm interested in knowing the one you have encountered yourself in your path. Because I guess it's not that easy, right, to build a brand around your own value in this world where no one is playing the same rules that you are fixing yourself to yourself.
Yes. In order to think about obstacles, I think you again have to go back to, like, you know, what are we defining as like the most inclusive parts of our business? Like, is it the team? Is it making sure that we can have an accessible workspace where we can actually get our employees who live in wheelchairs through the door and up the stairs and can be seated at the table, or other things like that? I think that it just comes back to what pieces of inclusivity are the most important, and including people in the product design. And so I think that those have been our biggest challenges too, is like when we work with other brands, and when I see thinking about how inclusivity is going to move forward and what's going to stop it is, and I sound like a broken record, but I really always think that it's putting people in positions of power. And if you don't have an accessible, like for example, for disability, if you don't have accessible workplace measures in place where you don't have time to allow your disabled employees to have a flexible schedule because of maybe a chronic illness, or you can't even get people through your shop door because it's not accessible, then you're never going to be able to create an authentic campaign. And thinking about things that are stopping, I mean, it was just Pride Month, and that's very heavily celebrated in the States, but it's only heavily celebrated really for June. And we call it, I don't know if the word's in French, but like woke washing, where it's like it's not an authentic campaign. You can see these giant corporations creating inauthentic products for capitalist gains, and they don't read right with the consumers. And then that's not going to it's not going to attract consumers. It's not going to reflect well. Like putting a Pride T-shirt that's really frickin' ugly in your store, or putting a disability Pride thing in your store where you don't have an accessible changing room, and you have anti-trans legislation or in your corporation. So when you don't have things be authentic, it's not going to translate well. It's not going to translate well to sales data. And when the buyer is looking at what are we going to do next quarter, we're in a recession. Hey, that inclusivity measure didn't measure up to our KPIs. It's like, great, because it wasn't authentic. And you know why it wasn't authentic? Because we had no people of diversity in positions of power making those KPIs and making honest, authentic campaigns in channels where those people actually can be reached.
Okay.
Yeah, I just
You're really mad about it.
No, but you're right, and I also think that all of what you've been saying is a way to limit the idea of trend, because that's the beginning of the conversation. It's about, it's a trend of being plus size, of being positive, like being positive regarding disabled people, like regarding gender, regarding people of color and stuff like that. But that's also the reason why maybe 1 year after or 2 years after, you're like, it's a fad. Like we need to find something else to speak of. We don't need to find something else to speak of, because if you have been inclusive enough, like if you really did the change, it's not a conversation anymore. It's not a conversation not because it's not a conversation in the society, but because you did the job for real. Like it's a really authentic way of creating the job that you did, and now it reflects it. So it's not about, maybe we should put someone of color on the next advertising, because it might not be necessary, because everybody knows that this brand is always doing something inclusive no matter what they're doing. It's not about, this campaign is about people of color, this campaign is for pride, this campaign is for, because I don't know, it's March and maybe let's do a body positive campaign. No, we're doing that through the year, so it's not about a trend, it's about a fact, it's about, like, it's a statement, not just a fad.
Yes, thank you. My last question is it realistic to believe in fully inclusive fashion, and why? You have already answered it, but maybe you would like to say something to conclude this discussion, something that you are working on maybe right now, or something which you are fighting against. Delphine? No, there's something I was thinking about. You are a very inspiring person, you know, because actually when I see like Delphine, for instance, she's very like she's carefully noting everything she wants to say and trying to be very careful to what she's saying. And this kind of attitude is not something that I see when I'm organizing roundtable with men speakers, for instance. They are always very confident. And I'm thinking it's also part of the problem, right? The way that we perceive ourselves and our own capacities. For instance, like a few years ago, I would never have thought myself able to moderate this kind of conversation in English. And I was like, so it's a challenge, so I must go. Because if I want to evolve and if I want to discuss the topic I want to discuss, I have to do so, right? So it's also about how we condition ourselves, and that's maybe, it's not the whole answer, but it's also part of it, maybe, right? What would be your conclusion, Delphine?
Yes, about the question, I'm convinced that mentalities are changing and that we must continue to fight to show more diversity in order to change mentalities. We have a real impact.
Okay. Charlène?
So I will conclude to say that people, we are human. We are human beings, but we are also human physically. So the fashion industry should definitely be all-inclusive. And I wish I'm dreaming of it every day, I can tell you. Because otherwise, we should just stop. I think we've got enough garments.
I think a big key point is the inclusivity within the teams, the people who build the business, who make the decision makers. That's a big point to be developed. And then for the product itself, well, I spoke about tailored products, but I'm also working on generative design, which is beyond just having something tailored. It's more adapted to your proper needs. So depending on your body shape, it really it's artificial intelligence meant to understand your needs from your body shape.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that I can't speak to all levels of inclusivity, but I can speak to where I think that the future of accessible clothing is going. And one of the beautiful things about accessible clothing done right is that it's actually accessible for everybody. So when we started to build our bras, I was like, oh my God, I actually hate putting my bra on, and like, why do I have the hook and eye in the back? Mm-hmm. It was invented in 1902. This is a little absurd. Like, we have all these AR, VR things, and we're still putting our bras on like our great-great-grandmothers did. And so when I think about accessible design, I think about making sure that it's perfect for everybody, and that, you know, I wear our bras every day. And so I think that in terms of disability inclusive fashion, I think that it will be eventually just fashion. It will just be better clothing for everybody. But I just hope that disabled people are included along the way and are put in positions of power, and not, you know, taken their innovations and used for everybody else.
For me, it will be more about community. I don't have the answer for the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years. But I remember when I started journalism, we were few young people being invited to fashion weeks. We are fewer women and we are fewer people of color being in the room. And when I look right now, like 10 years after, like, we are all seated and we all know each other. And so that also makes a difference, like to find the people where you can connect on values, where you can connect on ideas also is really important. Like, just to know that somebody else is working on the same project that you are working on, it's not making him or her kind of an enemy or a concurrent. It also makes him an ally because you are fighting towards the same goals. So it's really important to identify each other and maybe just connect, just have a coffee, maybe just spend some time together and see maybe some places where you can help each other. because most of the time you can help each other. So we have to expand our networks, and we have to expand also our ideas behind what it is to have a business, I think.
Thank you. So, would you have question in the audience for our speakers? Yes? 2 questions.
Thank you all. This was really informative. My question is going back towards education. It was brought up quite a bit, and in my other life, I'm a professor, and I find that this, inclusivity as a buzzword is very common in that space as well. And the idea as well, if we just put an Indigenous person, their article on the syllabus, then ta-da, we've done it, right? Are you finding that at the level of school, where you're training, and then also at the corporate level, that there are people who are experts in equity and inclusion teaching this? So it is not a one-off thing that we do, but rather it is the core foundation, right? So you had mentioned the professor who said you can't use that person because they're fat, right? Is there any push to sort of flip that model and have equity be at the foundation, that we demand that that's the foundation rather than an add-on later?
Yeah, you can answer.
Okay. So I've been teaching for 5 years, I think, at different campuses. I've been at EFM in Paris, and then now I'm in Parsons. I think for schools, it was not that long that they started to think about what it is to be inclusive, especially in Paris, because it's not really part of our, I would say, ideology. We have this idea of universalism, so we think everybody is treated equally, no matter where they come from and who they are, which is, it has often been proven that it's not the case. But so for school now, it's all this work of what type of courses do we need to develop? Who is the best person able to teach it? And how can it be, like, how can it resonate to students? So it's about like which type of students have access to the school, which type of corpus and which type of classes they can attend to, which type of professors that will be speaking to them, and do those professors have like the legitimacy and the leniency from the top of the school to do what they came here to do. So, I mean, I don't have the perfect answer, but I think it's a work in progress for most of the school. Some schools are maybe more advanced in this subject than others, but I think for most of fashion school in itself, it's something that is being discussed.
You mentioned indigenous people. I think it's also important to not forget that here in Europe we are colonialist countries, UK, France, Portugal, Spain. And so it's more, and we're not taught it so much at school. It's kind of like, yeah, it happened, but you know. But it had a huge impact on the world. And when I speak with women from India, from Africa, and we talk about their body shapes and how difficult it is for them, even though they have a lot of money, to find something that fits them, it's because the standards are from Europe. And because it's not also discussed so much in school, even before fashion school, it's something that people are not so aware of. And I think that to give more space, to people from other regions of the world is very important, because they come with another view on that. So I think it's also part of inclusivity to have people from, indigenous people from Latin America, from Africa, from India, from China to come and speak about what they know about inclusivity also, and who they are really and what their needs are.
I agree, and I think that also what Melody was saying earlier was that, like, I mean, we can do the best we can in schools, but ultimately it's like a systemic problem where it's like why is the fashion industry so exclusive? It's like, no, everybody's exclusive. And I also think that there's a lot of pressure on professors, and I think that there should be measures like having it part of the core curriculum and not part of and exactly what you all are saying, and not just some elective and who's teaching it, but also like it comes from the way that parents talk to their children. It comes from the way who our government's giving access and funding to, the legislation's in place. And so I think that there's a lot of pressure on fashion schools. There's a lot of pressure on like corporate education, but ultimately it's also a systemic issue that like our government and other people in power have to work towards too, and parents in their homes, and school teachers, and the school boards at local levels.
Yeah, and also in fashion school there is this very strange phenomenon where you have, let's say, 80% of women. It's changing. We have more kind of genders now in fashion school, but still it's, yeah. And in the end, when you look at the final picture of the fashion professional, it's a bit different, right? Especially when you look at the selection of the Fédération blah, blah, blah. You see that in the end, there is a lack of representation in a way in the end of the process for women, especially. And that's something, is it not the way that we are looking at our students? Are we not, like, not consciously, but making a difference between the only guy in the classroom with all the other students? I don't know, it's a question that I have in mind, because I can't explain myself that, like, this big gap between the school and the reality of our industry.
I mean, it's also what you're being told, being a woman. Just a few days ago, a coach, told me, because I'm fundraising, like, don't pitch like a girl. A woman told me that. I mean, what does it mean? When you're a woman and you're entrepreneur, you have to be really tough and really willing and really, perseverant and resilient to reach a step that men reach with more easiness, because they're more supported. Because they're like, yeah, it's a man, so I'm going to trust him more. It's probably better with money and probably, more daring.
It's also because we always understood men as being figure of power. So they don't have to make any effort. As for women, we have to show, because most of people won't think we have like the possibility and capacities to be in this industry and to like be an entrepreneur or stuff like that. So we have to prove, which men doesn't have to do. But I just wanted to add for you that it's also like we have to use internationality of the classrooms. We have a lot of people, a lot of students are coming from international backgrounds. And in my class, I'm teaching fashion and criticism. And I always say that I'm speaking as a black woman, yes, but from France. So the way I've been educated is coming from a former colonial country. So I don't know everything that has been going on in Japan, in Mexico, or no matter the country. So I have to let the room from someone in my class to say like, but this is not the reflection of what is going on for me, or this is not a reflection of what has been being done in my country, or maybe inclusivity and diversity doesn't mean anything from where I come from, because we are all look alike, or we don't really mind about this type of stuff. So you have to have this openness in your class if you want to be really inclusive, actually.
And many schools have different schools around the world. So sometimes it's just as easy as connecting the students together, and as a teacher, maybe reach out to another teacher in another part of the world and do, I don't know, an online workshop together or something like that. I agree.
We had another question, right? Can you...
Hello, I'm Belvis from Laxidus Magazine. It's about sustainability. Thanks for this beautiful talk. I have two questions. One is about one of the main problems of your customers is the price. You know, you have to make to order. This costs a lot. So how can they, even disabled people or people with that are that they have another body type, they have to pay a lot for the fashion. Do you see a time when it is going not to happen to them, because it's very important? And the second question is, let's talk about inspiration. There is somebody or a brand, or is there any marketplace where our readers can find your fashion all together? If we are talking about community, let's make it, no?
Before you answer, I would say something. Is that the consumer who is paying too much for the products that you are offering to him, corresponding well to his body, his size, body? Or is that the other consumers that are not paying the right price for the fashion products? Yeah. Of course, you're right. You are right, and your question is really relevant. Yeah. 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 So please, can you answer this very interesting question?
It's a really good question. And, we are working on our fabrics and our dyeing and our ethical manufacturing. And I'm learning all about the pieces of the supply chain too. And I never want to disenfranchise somebody that's making our products to empower somebody else. Like, I want to empower everybody on all parts of the supply chain. And right now, our bras retail at around like 66 euros, which is very expensive, especially in the United States, when you can maximum, if you're on Social Security income, save up to $2,000 a month. And so you have no way to accrue assets, and that is an expensive bra. And we have had to, and it's something that I'm thinking about all the time. And so we're coming out with a new bra that's not as technologically exactly as easy, but I can't change the price of the raw materials. It's something that's on my mind. I'm always thinking about innovative ways to keep going, and maybe our bra is our first iteration, and we keep going to make it more affordable. But while making sure that we empower people who are creating the bra, my head's in a headache, and so if anybody has any solutions, it's something that's top of my mind, and it sucks that there's not a clear-cut solution right now.
We can talk about it. Because I use 3D technologies for scanning, but as well for producing, which is 3D knitting. And when you use 3D knitting, it's machines who produce, but it's 60 less waste as cotton sew production. So it's actually really, really sustainable. And you can produce something quickly for not very expensive with the fabric you want, with the yarns you want, for any body shape. To me, I hope, because this could be a good answer to how to make tailored products not too expensive.
Delphine, maybe on this question, are your customers paying really more than other ones for? Yeah.
Yes, the question of the price, it was a real problem for me. But when you want to do things well, made in France, making on demand, it's a true cost. For Maison Finou, we offer payment facilities 3 times free of charge. It's a small answer, but voilà.
Good one. Maybe.
And it raises another question on how to consume.
It's also true that the brand that we have invited are really making a lot of effort, and they are not practicing big margins. And I know that your question is also addressing the wool market, which is sometimes in a different case, right? Do you have something to say about the price that?
Yes, definitely. I think the way we create today, and especially, I would not say the old generation are not involved, but it's like it takes more time, right? But when we work with 3D and all those new technologies that are definitely saving time and saving money, at the end, you can come to a better price, but you also have to explain the why another style could be more expensive, because the yarn didn't like go all over the world, and the makers, they get really paid like for what they are doing. So not everybody is aware, or I would say that people knows, but they are like, yeah, but still I don't want to spend that much money into it. But at the end, this transparency that is definitely coming more and more into the fashion industry will definitely clear everything. I'm quite sure. In terms of costs.
I agree, and I think that transparency is so important, and I like to think about that. And I think that's so important for so many consumers. But when it's the end of the day and you have to choose between buying a bra and buying a wheelchair so you can get out and do your stuff, and the government has like regulated how much money you can have in your bank account, it doesn't matter what story you're telling. Like, it ultimately comes down to, can I afford this and can I live my life? So I think it depends on what socioeconomic background you're having. If you're trying to convince upper middle class folks, absolutely, the story is going to be critical. But if you're focusing on folks at the bottom, who are the folks that are buying those stuff, we need other solutions.
I mean, even for people who have a lot of money, in the end of the day, I think people still buy for a brand, an identity, but buying for the sustainability of a brand, to be honest, I'm not sure. People tell you it's great, it's amazing, but they don't put the price on something that is just sustainable and well ethically made.
It's so easy to lie on the message. Like I have even worked on advertising campaign with like body positive campaigns for shoes that are not at all body positive, because when you have big fits, it's very difficult to buy shoes actually, and there is behind the image there is another reality, so it's even more complicated for brands who really make the job to spread the right message to our consumer.
I just wanted to add also that a key point is the manufacturers. I think for a lot of brands nowadays, like if you started your brand with a manufacturer and is not sustainable enough, or it doesn't understand the idea of inclusivity or stuff like that, most of the brand wants to accompany the change, so it takes a lot of time. So it also plays a part on the pricing, because if your manufacturer has to buy new machines, if he has to buy new technologies for him to reach your level, it's going to cost him a lot of money, and so you're going to pay more money in the end, and the customer is going to pay more money too. So we also are at the beginning of a conversation, and we can only hope that in maybe 10 or 20 years, your brands will still be like on the market, and you will have a company and created a new relationship with manufacturers, which will allow your customers to maybe pay for lesser price. But that's only something to hope, and we're waiting to see.
So thank you. Do we have any last questions? If not, I just have to say thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
And you can pursue the exchange after the roundtable. Thank you.